For Ninja Theory, survival was never guaranteed. In 2007, the studio poured everything into Heavenly Sword, delivering a cinematic showcase for the PlayStation 3. But Sony held the rights and the technology, leaving Tameem Antoniades and his team with nothing to build on. Once again afterwards, the studio was back to square one, talented, ambitious, and nearly out of options. So they swung big. Partnering with actor Andy Serkis, writer Alex Garland, and composer Nitin Sawhney, Ninja Theory set out to create a game that would prove video games could tell stories with the weight of cinema. The result was Enslaved, Odyssey to the West, a post-apocalyptic retelling of a Chinese epic built on a shoestring budget and carried forward by sheer willpower. Today, we're revisiting Enslaved, a game born from desperation, shaped by artistry, and remembered as one of Ninja Theory's boldest risks. Join us as we uncover its story of ambition and survival on this week's trip down memory card lane. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. I hope these words find you well. Hello and welcome to the 267th episode of our video game history podcast, A Trip Down Memory Card Lane. Each week we'll tell you a story relevant to the current week in gaming history. It can be about a game or the people who have created it. It can be about a console or the technology that brought it to life. We often talk about the companies that bring it all together, making our hobby, video games, a reality. While telling you each story, we hope to teach you something new about the topic, what it took from the world as its inspiration, or what it gave back to the world in its legacy. Today, we're venturing into Enslaved, Odyssey to the West, the 2010 action-adventure game that reimagined the classic Chinese tale Journey to the West in a post-apocalyptic world. With its compelling characters, innovative gameplay, and stunning visuals, Enslaved carved a unique niche and in its moment of gaming history. I'm David Casson, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, who'd probably fall off the first ledge and blame it on bad camera angles. He's my brother, Rob Casson. Rob, do you think you'd make it all the way west? Or would you just, get beaten up by a mech before you even leave the ruins?
Oh, I'm staying in those ruins, Dave.
Yeah, that's probably safer anyways, for sure.
You got that right.
Yeah, I'm with you. Definitely safer to get in the ruins for sure. You know of this game at all?
Nope, sure don't.
This is kind of an obscure one.
Yeah, definitely not for me. There definitely wasn't one that crossed my path.
I mean, 2010's not that old.
No, not at all. Only 15 years.
Yeah.
Almost old enough to drive.
15, it splits your time in half. I was thinking 15 years from when you were born, but it's also 15 years from now.
True.
There you go. All right, well, we are going to be covering Enslaved, the game, and we're also going to be covering the team that made it, which is some new people that we've never had a chance to cover before. So we got a whole bunch of new stuff to talk about. So we'll get right to it in just a moment. Before we get there, Rob, why don't you share with our listeners what else has happened during this week in gaming history?
First up, on October 10th, 1997, Interplay Entertainment released Fallout 4 PC, and this forever changed the landscape of role-playing games. Dropping players into a retro-futuristic wasteland ravaged by nuclear war, Fallout stood out for its freedom of choice. Every dialogue, quest, and decision could ripple across the world in meaningful ways. It blended tactical turn-based combat with the now iconic special system, letting players shape characters through strength, perception, endurance, charisma, intelligence, agility, and luck. What set it apart, though, was its tone. A mix of grim survival, biting dark humor, and a willingness to force players into morally gray situations. Critics praised its depth, while fans latched on to its open-ended world and distinctive atmosphere. In time, it became the foundation of one of gaming's most enduring franchises. We told this story back in episode 111, so if you'd like to hear more about how the Fallout universe began, why don't you revisit that trip down memory card lane?
Yeah, revisit that trip down memory card lane.
Yeah. Next up, on October 8th, 1999, Exidy Inc. was officially dissolved, bringing an end to one of the earliest and most provocative names in arcade history. Founded in 1973, Exidy carved out a reputation with quirky hits like Serkis, Crossbow, and Mousetrap. But it was 1976's Death Race that cemented their place in gaming lore. Meant as a simple arcade driving game where players ran over gremlin like creatures, the imagery sparked outrage when many mistook it for running down pedestrians. Headlines, TV segments, and political attention followed, making Death Race the subject of one of the industry's first moral panics. That notoriety gave Exidy a lasting place in cultural history, even as they struggled to keep pace with giants like Atari and Midway in the 1980s. By the time of their dissolution, Exidy had long faded from the spotlight, but their story remains a reminder that video games have courted controversy since the very beginning. So, that's something we'll maybe talk about someday.
Maybe.
But there's so many other episodes you can find that have courted controversy.
That's very true.
Next up, on October 7th, 2004, Valve released Counter-Strike Source for Windows, which brought one of the most popular mods of all time into the brand new Source engine. More than just a facelift, it reimagined the iconic maps of Counter-Strike with updated physics, improved visuals, and a new level of polish, all while keeping the core gameplay of terrorists versus counter-terrorists intact. Launching alongside Half-Life 2 preloads, it served as many players' first real look at Valve's new technology. Though some diehards stuck to the original 1.6 for years, Source carved out its own competitive community, bridging the gap between the mod era and the modern esports landscape. It laid the groundwork for Counter-Strike Global Offensive and beyond, which ensured that Valve's tactical shooter remained one of the most enduring and influential multiplayer games in history.
God, I remember when Counter-Strike was what everyone was playing. Oh, it was such a moment. Hardcore competitive shooting. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it's still a thing today, so it's kind of crazy to think.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's just that was such a phenomenon. We went from these big sprawling arenas into these really tight tactical levels. It was pretty radical shift for competitive shooters at the time. So,
Indeed, Dave.
mm-hmm.
On October 11th, 2006, Capcom announced the closure of Clover Studio, the short-lived but beloved developer behind Beautiful Joe, Okami, and God Hand. Founded in 2004, Clover quickly built a reputation for pushing boundaries with bold ideas and striking artistic direction. While their games earned critical acclaim and cult followings, they struggled to meet Capcom's commercial expectations. The studio's shutdown marked the loss of a creative powerhouse within Capcom, but it wasn't the end for its talent. Key figures like Shinji Mikami, Hideki Kamiya, and Atsushi Inaba carried Clover's spirit forward, later founding Platinum Games, which is a studio now celebrated for its own groundbreaking action titles. Clover's legacy endures in the enduring influence of its games, which remain touchstones of creativity and artistic risk-taking in the medium.
We've done episodes on Beautiful Joe. We've done episodes on Okami. And what did we do by Platinum? I know for a fact that we did a Platinum Games. We did a Platinum Games episode. What did they make in Platinum Games that we did? I don't. Maybe we
Um,
didn't do one yet because they're Bayonetta. Maybe we haven't got there yet.
I don't think we've gotten there yet, Dave.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Moving on.
All right. Well, last up for this week in gaming history, it was on October 5th, 2007, that Bungie stunned the industry by announcing its split from Microsoft to once again become an independent studio. Acquired in 2000, Bungie had spent 7 years as the crown jewel in the Xbox portfolio, creating Halo, the series that defined Microsoft's console identity. But after finishing Halo 3, the studio negotiated its way out of full corporate ownership, leaving Microsoft with a minority stake and the rights to Halo itself. For Bungie, independence meant the freedom to pursue new ideas, eventually leading to the creation of Destiny. For Microsoft, it meant relying on internal studio 343 Industries to carry the Halo torch. The move underscored a tension that still defines the industry today: the balance between creative freedom and corporate oversight. Bungie's decision to chart its own course reshaped not just its own future, but the trajectory of two of gaming's biggest franchises. And with that, Dave, I think it's time for your episode topic.
I think it is. Well, as usual, before we get into our topic, we got to start with the man who created it. I'm a broken record, right? I do this over and over and over.
Oh, yeah.
The man at the center of the story is Tameem Antoniades. His journey into game development is anything but ordinary. Antoniades was born in Afghanistan, but his mother fled the country with him when he was only 2 years old. They settled in London, and by the time he was 6, his mother had remarried. His new stepfather, Andreas Antoniades, had a past straight out of a crime novel. He was a Greek Cypriot former assassin who became an informer for the British government, feeding intelligence on guerrilla groups in Cyprus and later on heroin smuggling gangs in Europe.
I'm sorry, what the fuck?
Yes, he was a former assassin who became a informant.
Huh? This feels like a movie or a book. Like, no, what?
That underworld lifestyle meant that Antoniades' family was constantly on the move. They were in Paris for a few years, Barcelona for others, all while Andreas drifted in and out of prison. Sometimes
Oh,
he was
nice.
released thanks to his government handlers, but even sometimes with help from high-level officials. At one point, Antoniades' mother wound up in prison because of her husband's affairs. And so the point of this is that for young Tameem, that meant long stretches without his parents. At times, no joke, he was told that adoption might be his only future. So to cope,
Wow.
he learned to bury his emotions, something he called a Spock-like ability to detach. A distant family nicknamed him the Robot because he was always tinkering, always making things. He wanted to be an inventor, but what he really wanted to invent were video games. In France, he had discovered arcades. In Spain, he became obsessed with them. When his parents went out gambling, they would leave him and his brother with a bag of coins, and they would spend entire evenings mastering games. By age 13, Tameem had his own Commodore 64 and was teaching himself to program. That was the moment he knew that this was his path. All of that instability in his childhood, the moving, the absence of his parents, the constant uncertainty shaped Tameem into someone who buried his emotions and focused on creating. By the time he was a teenager, he wasn't just playing games in arcades anymore. He was programming them on his Commodore 64, dreaming of a future where he could invent games of his own. That dream carried him into university, where he barely scraped through with a computer science degree. Grades didn't matter, but his skills did. Those skills landed him a job at Millennium Interactive, a Cambridge studio that would later become part of Sony. And it was here, in the mid 90s, that Tameem began his professional journey into the games industry. His first project was a licensed adaptation of Raymond Briggs' The Snowman. By Tameem's own admission, it was awful. But he was the only programmer on the game, which meant he got to work on every part of development. It was a trial by fire, and it gave him experience across the board. As the years went on, he worked on the 3DO and PlayStation, but Tameem always knew that he wanted to do more than code. He wanted to design. So when Sony acquired Millennium Interactive, he pitched a game to them called Moon Warrior, a stealth action title about a Shaolin monk, inspired by his love of Kung Fu cinema. Sony's marketing team was intrigued, but within his own studio, Antoniades faced resistance. Senior designers had their own ideas turned down, and so they resented a young coder getting a green light. And so they stalled the project. And Antoniades soon realized that he was the one on the chopping block. It was a turning point for him. He didn't want to be at the mercy of other people's decisions. If he was going to make the games he dreamed of, he'd have to create his own space to do it. So in the year 2000, at just 25 years old, he left Sony. Along with art lead Nina Christensen and senior programmer Mike Ball, he founded a new company, Just Add Monsters. Their first studio was Mike Ball's spare bedroom. They didn't even own development ready computers at first. For 3 months, Antonio
Honestly,
D.
I
Hmm.
thought you were saying Spare Bedroom was the name of it.
Oh, no. They literally
Yeah.
set up shop in a spare bedroom in Mike Ball's house or apartment. I don't know which.
Wow. That's a lot better than having it called Mike Ball's Spare Bedroom.
For 3 months, Tameem poured himself into a design document for a game that he called Kung Fu Chaos. It was a 4-player brawler inspired by Jackie Chan films and Hong Kong's love of parodying American cinema. The conceit was that players were kung fu actors working for a reckless film director who staged elaborate fight scenes with no regard for safety. Antoniades' design document wasn't just walls of text, it was packed with diagrams and storyboards, visually communicating the energy and humor that he wanted to capture. But pitching it out of Mike Ball's spare bedroom, Rob, came with its own problems. Disney and LucasArts executives were interested in the game, and they would come by, see the team's setup, and scoff.
Oh.
I mean, you brought them into some random guy's bedroom, they're going to look around and go, what the heck is going on? You know?
It's true, but still, come on.
The future of Kung Fu Chaos looked uncertain until a company called Argonaut Games appeared with a lifeline. Now, we've covered Argonaut Games before. They created the FX chip, so Star Fox. You know,
Oh, yeah.
they're from that period. Argonaut acquired Just Add Monsters at this point, gave them an office, gave them proper staff and equipment, but they set a deadline. You have to find a publisher for Kung Fu Chaos within 3 months. And they did, just barely. On the very last day of the agreed upon deal window, they struck an agreement with Microsoft. In 2003, Kung Fu Chaos released on the original Xbox. It was Antoniades' first shipped game as a designer, and creatively, it was a success, brimming with chaotic energy and a unique sense of humor. But commercially, frankly, it fell flat. Even though the game was creative and full of personality, the industry was shifting. New consoles were on the horizon, budgets were growing, and players were kind of gravitating towards more larger blockbuster style experiences, right? And so quirky, smaller titles like Kung Fu Chaos were kind of already going out of fashion as they were being made. Recognizing this, Antoniades started sketching something bigger. Inspired by a wave of wuxia cinema, movies like Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, and Hero, he envisioned a sweeping martial arts epic for the next generation of hardware. That project became a game called Heavenly Sword. But midway through development on Heavenly Sword, disaster struck. Their parent company, Argonaut Games, collapsed, and with it, Just Add Monsters was about to go under. Antoniades recalled the chilling phone call. We've run out of money. We're going bust, which means you're going bust. You've got 2 weeks to find money if you want to buy out your studio.
Yikes.
So Antoniades and the team took a massive risk. The founders all remortgaged their homes, scraping together enough money to keep the lights on for 3 more months. With additional help from Jez, the founder of Argonaut, they bought the studio back, rebranded it as Ninja Theory, and set out once again to find a publisher in a race against time. Now, just like with Kung Fu Chaos, Salvation came at the last possible moment. Sony signed on to publish Heavenly Sword. The terms were not ideal for Ninja Theory. Sony owns the IP and all the technology that was behind the game, but the deal kept Ninja Theory alive.
I got let go and came right back.
That's it. That's exactly it. The team ballooned through the rest of development from 20 people to over 100 in a single year in order to finish Heavenly Sword. They were working with PlayStation 3 prototype hardware that was frankly constantly in flux. Development on the game was absolutely a nightmare because of that, but the studio was. They were determined to prove themselves, right? Central to that effort to prove themselves to make a good game was their performance capture. And Antoniades wanted cinematic storytelling, and he knew that he needed groundbreaking talent to achieve it. By chance, his brother, who was working as a mortgage advisor, happened to be handling Andy Serkis's mortgage. Andy Serkis, the guy who is Golem in Lord of the Rings at the time, and now he's been Planet of the Apes and various Marvel movies, and he's like the motion capture king at this point, right?
Yeah, very interesting fact. Okay.
So Tameem seized the opportunity to meet Andy Serkis. After Andy Serkis saw Ninja Theory's trailer, he agreed to come on board. He didn't just play his character, King Bohan, who is the villain of Heavenly Sword. He directed cutscenes, he cast other roles, he even helped shape the story. He made connections, so the team traveled to Weta Digital in New Zealand, the studio where Serkis had worked on Lord of the Rings. And there, for 6 weeks, they captured face, body, and voice simultaneously, pioneering really a process that few games had attempted before. And Antoniades later said that he thought it might actually be the first time that Weta itself had ever used full performance capture. When Heavenly Sword launched in 2007, it ended up being an absolute technical showcase for the PS3. Critics praised its visuals, its storytelling, and its performances. Despite the ambition, however, the game did not sell well enough for Sony to consider a sequel, at least not without taking full creative control away from Ninja Theory. But for Antoniades and his team, it was yet another cycle of survival, and another cycle of creative success with commercial struggle. And through it, they had built a reputation, but they weren't done yet. After Heavenly Sword, Ninja Theory was once again looking for a lifeline. Sony owned Heavenly Sword's IP and they owned Heavenly Sword's technology. So if they wanted to build a new project, make another project, which they needed to do to survive, they had to start from scratch and build something original. So the team got together, and the idea that emerged was our topic today, Enslaved Odyssey to the West. It is a project that started out codenamed simply Monkey.
Okay, quite
There's
the
a
code
reason.
name.
There's a reason for that. Once again, money was tight. Without the in-house technology that they made for Heavenly Sword, the team licensed Unreal Engine 3, so they didn't have to build an engine from scratch. Within 2 months, they had built a detailed design document and a very slick CG trailer. They even pitched the concept to several Hollywood studios as a potential CGI film instead, but their model really didn't fit studios' thoughts at the time. Studios were fixated on high cost, non real time pipelines and kind of balked at the leaner approach that game studios took. So interest, frankly, fizzled on turning Monkey into a movie.
Interesting.
But those same materials were strong enough to secure a publishing deal with a small company called Green Screen. As is the Ninja Theory way, disaster struck almost immediately. Green Screen collapsed just 1 month after signing Ninja Theory.
Oh my goodness.
The small signing fee that Green Screen provided Ninja Theory before they went out gave the studio just enough breathing room to keep the lights on while they searched for another partner. And so at the last possible moment, they got a lifeline from Namco Bandai, who agreed to publish the game, which saved the studio from closure for the umpteenth millionth time in its history.
Yeah, pretty crazy.
And so with Namco's backing, Monkey began to take shape. Um, the team drew inspiration from a book called Journey to the West, one of China's most celebrated literary works. Tameem simply liked the story, and he had fond memories of a TV adaptation of it, a campy 1970s TV series called Monkey. Also, he wanted a different starting point than the usual Western genre tropes, right? We tell video game has the tendency, at least at the time, to all be make games that was very Western centric. Everything came from a Western point of view. So this was a chance to do something different, right? So he went to the art team, and the art team said that they wanted to make a sci-fi game at this point. And so the mandate became cool. Let's do a sci-fi monkey, because the original Journey to the West is a mythological story. It's very, gods and mythological creatures type deal. It's very great. It's fantastic. We just got a game recently that was based on it, didn't we?
I don't know. It's Wukong.
Yes, thank you. Yes, it is. It's definitely Wukong. Yep, that's exactly it. That's also based on Journey to the West.
All right. Well, there you go. Didn't know it.
I was excited when they were making that because the characters in it, like the models, the bosses and stuff they were showing, to me, they're straight out of that world and they're awesome.
Hell yeah.
The adaptation being Sci Fi Monkey was intentionally loose but deliberate. The slave headband, a cloud, a staff, a monkey who begins as an anarchic brute, and Trip is one of the other characters. Trip's gender mirrors the TV show rather than the novel. And as they wrote it, they wrote small nods that pepper the world. Little Easter eggs here and there. There's a Buddha hand set piece. There's a submerged giant mech that echoes a water demon. These are all recognizable if you look for them. It was a real it was a labor of love. They wanted to give recognition to where recognition is due with the original, but by making it sci-fi, they were turning it into something completely different and also different from what everyone else was doing at the time, right? These type of games were largely fantasy at the time. So putting it in a sci-fi universe was also by design to set them apart from it. And so the team leaned into that. They leaned into science fiction. That was a direction that the developers at Ninja Theory were really eager to explore. So demons became mechs and magic became technology. And the story kind of unfolded into one set in a post-apocalyptic America that was reclaimed by nature. Visually, the style that they set on fused Miyazaki's nature meets machine sensibility with They got their other premise from a TV series, like a documentary series called Life After People, which is exactly what it sounds like. Basically, the theory was they were imagining bright, living colors that were erupting through rust and ruin. They also cited the kinetic android on robot energy of Kashim as an action touchstone, so they were just kind of pulling from all over the place. Ninja Theory wanted the game with Monkey and Trip together to be a buddy story, but not a chain of dreaded escort missions, which is what happens in those games many times. Antoniades pointed to Ico and Another World, both games we've covered in the past, as proof that you can make dependency feel emotional rather than burdensome. So from the start, Monkey and Trip were designed as independent partners. You aren't chained together at times, but the encounters, the level beats, and all the systems assume that each is necessary to the other for survival. And that philosophy kind of broadened the gameplay beyond what they had done before with Heavenly Sword's pure melee focus. Combat for this stayed streamlined and more staff centric, but the team was able to layer in platforming, more traversal, some more puzzles, and Trip got this really cool tactical toolkit with like decoys and hacking. So you really got to experience an action adventure and not just a fighting game. Heavenly Swords very much a hack and slash, and the point is the team really wanted to get away from that, okay? Now, the creative lineup for Enslaved, when you step back and you look at it, absolutely extraordinary, right? Antoniades was the creative director. Andy Serkis returned after Heavenly Sword. He performed Monkey's role and came back to co-direct cinematics, also help shape casting and narrative beats. So much so that, he kind of, he helped with design the game, right? Ninja Theory landed Alex Garland, a writer who was already known for writing The Beach and 28 Days Later, and I think Sunshine at this point, which is one of my absolute favorite sci-fi horror movies. So, heavy Hollywood writer. And Garland spent about 2 years with the team. He paired dialogue to the essential story, he pushed for visual storytelling, and he worked hand in hand with designers. They went chapter by chapter to mesh the story with the cameras, with the sound, and the combat. Garland's influence on the game was so extensive that he actually, by the end, they gave him a co designer credit, not just a writing credit.
Oh, nice.
And they brought back the composer from Heavenly Sword, Nitin Sawhney, who scored the game, did this really great soundtrack around journey, transition, and resolution to kind of mirror the journey that Monkey and Trip were having. But just like Heavenly Sword, performance capture became the backbone of development. They built on lessons that they learned from Heavenly Sword. For this game, Ninja Theory shot full performance, body, face, and voice simultaneously at a studio called the House of Moves, which favored theatrical staging over kind of the stitched together tracks they worked with before. And Serkis's film experience really helped the team kind of develop a pipeline where they composed scenes and didn't just piecemeal together body, voice, and face capture. That was the point of doing it all at one time. And he helped cast. Casting followed that purpose. Lindsay Shaw of, I don't know, what was she in 10 Things I Hate About You? Lindsay Shaw became Trip. She was one of 50 or 60 actresses who auctioned in character because her physicality, voice, and facial nuance kind of matched their idea for the role. She got the role. Richard Ridings became Pigsy, another character in the series. And production, the team really focused heavily on making sure they got the characters' looks right. Trip was early on. Trip was a gothic queen, so to speak. Had these different punk variants, but they softened that as development went on into a more resilient, vulnerable survivor, I guess is what they settled on. Monkey earned tribal face paint, some scars, and a sash that kind of gave credence to his mythic roots, but also giving him a sense of humanity because you can be mythic. Well, let me step back. You can't scar if you're immortal, theoretically, right? Like, scarring is a very human thing. Getting injured is a very human thing. So,
I gotcha. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah.
now despite operating on only 2/3 of Heavenly Sword's budget, Ninja Theory really pushed to make this something bigger and more ambitious. And so with Serkis, Garland, Sawhney, and Antoniades staring, Enslaved really represented this rare convergence of talent from film, literature, music, and games, and really set the studio on a crash course in crafting a really great cinematic video game. They worked on it, and finally, on October 5th, 2010, the team released Enslaved to the world. After yet another cycle of near collapse and last minute salvation, Ninja Theory had forged one of the most ambitious projects of their career. You know, Rob, Enslaved took a classic tale like Journey to the West and reimagined it into a post apocalyptic adventure anyone could experience. It kind of reminds me of how easy it is these days to start a podcast.
Wait, you're saying podcasting can be as simple as teaming up with Trip to cross a wasteland full of robots?
Exactly. That's why I use Zencaster. It's the all in one podcasting platform that makes recording a breeze. You just log in through your browser, hit record, and you're instantly capturing studio quality audio and up to 4K video. There's no scavenging for old world tech required.
All right, but what if something breaks down mid journey? Monkey didn't exactly have autosaves.
Well, that's where Zencaster's multi layered backups come in. Even if your connection drops, your recordings are safe in the highest quality. No need to fear a mech ambush wiping out your progress.
And editing? Don't tell me I had to hack through filler words like monkey hacking through another robot squad.
Not at all. Zencaster's post production tools automatically clean up your audio, removing background noise, cutting those ums and uhs, balancing your levels, and trimming awkward pauses. It's like having Trip smoothing the way forward so you can focus on the journey.
Okay, but once it's ready, how do I get my show out into the world? I might want to stay in the old ruin, but I don't want my show there.
Well, that's the best part. Zencaster also makes distributing your podcast to all the major platforms like Spotify and Apple Podcasts as easy as following a clear path. One click, and your story is out there for everyone to hear.
So, podcasting without the wasteland headaches. How do our listeners get started?
Go to zencaster.com/pricing and use our offer code, all one word, memory card lane, and you'll get 30% off the first month of any Zencaster paid plan. If you want the same easy experience that we have to record and publish our podcast, join Zencaster because it's time to share your story.
So, if you've been thinking about starting your own show, grab that discount and get moving. Like Monkey on the Road West.
That's exactly right. Head over to Zencaster, use our offer code, all one word, memory card lane, and you can get 30% off the first month.
Now, let's get back to the story of Enslaved Odyssey to the West.
Like I said, Enslaved released in October of 2010 for the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360. And despite having only 2/3 of Heavenly Sword's budget, it was certainly Ninja Theory's most ambitious project. Critics were quick to praise the game's strengths. Reviews highlighted its lush, overgrown, post apocalyptic environments, the quality of its performances, and especially the chemistry between Monkey and Trip. Andy Serkis and Lindsay Shaw gave the characters a humanity that was rarely seen in games at the time, and Alex Garland's writing, his stripped down cinematic storytelling really resonated with players who were used to more heavy-handed exposition. Many reviewers compared the relationship dynamic to Ico or Prince of Persia: The Sands of Time, noting how it elevated what could have been a simple action game into something more emotional. And while the critical reception was incredibly strong, the sales certainly told a different story. Namco Bandai had hoped for over 1 million units sold. In November of 2010, they announced sales of 800,000 copies worldwide, but a few months later, that figure was corrected to only 460,000. By September of 2011, that number had climbed to 730,000, but that still wasn't enough. Through the process, they had planned a sequel, but with the lack of sales, that sequel was quietly canceled, with Namco citing a crowded holiday release window as a major factor in the game's failure to reach its goals. In 2014, Antoniades reflected on the disappointment, admitting that he wasn't sure whether it was the fantasy elements, the gameplay mix, or the lack of visibility that held it back. Probably a mix of all three in the end, he said, but still, it didn't meet up to expectations. And that's sad, Rob. I played this when it came out. I believe, if I remember correctly, I rented it through GameFly, that the mail-in service,
Yep, I recall.
And I really enjoyed this one. It was surprising. Like, it was a game that you didn't hear much about, that didn't have a big, like, I don't remember marketing on it. I didn't know much about it. But you got word of mouth that it was good, and so I rented it, and I genuinely enjoyed it. Like, I don't know why it failed, because I think it fits with the storytelling based action adventure games. Like, I think, to be fair, and this comes up, Enslaved is very similar to Horizon Zero Dawn. Like, the world building that they did, the concept of sci-fi in a post-apocalyptic world and everything, like, Enslaved and Horizon are very similar. In fact, whenever it gets brought up, when he gets asked, Tameem gets asked about a potential sequel for Enslaved, now that it's 15 years later, he frequently says, I don't think there's any place for it now alongside the Horizon series.
Interesting. I had no idea they were so similar. To be fair, I didn't really know anything about this game, but
Right. I genuinely enjoyed this game. It was, for the time that it was made, it was fantastic. It probably would hold up well now, to be fair. Good performances always do. The story of Enslaved and Ninja Theory didn't really end there. Later in 2010, Ninja Theory released a downloadable expansion for the game called Pigsy's Perfect 10. It's set before the events of the main story, and it follows the other character, Pigsy, in his own adventure, which introduced different mechanics. It was also a lighter, more comedic tone. And as it came out, Antoniades made it very clear that it wasn't content that was cut from the game. It was developed afterward by a small team that had extra time and a small budget. And for many players, it gave the character of Pigsy more depth and really rounded out the world of Enslaved for them. Over the years, Enslaved has really gained a reputation as a cult classic. It is cited on lists of underrated games of its generation. And while it didn't meet its sales goals, it also didn't bring an end to Ninja Theory. The studio once again survived by reinventing itself.
Jesus.
Unfortunately, Rob, that meant in 2013 we got DMC Devil May Cry, your absolute favorite Devil May Cry game.
Yeah, I know.
For those of you that don't know, DMC is a reboot of Capcom's iconic franchise that really split opinion among fans because it was so different than the normal Devil May Cry games. What it did for Ninja Theory, though, was it really proved that they could handle a major license. If you want to learn about that game and what we know about it and why Rob hates it, we actually covered it in episode 20, so go give it a listen if you'd like to learn more. A few years later, they pivoted again, pioneering a process that Antoniades called independent AAA, which is building blockbuster quality games on smaller budgets. That development philosophy gave us Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice in 2017, which is a absolute critical and commercial success of a game that blended psychological storytelling with a very tight story. And so the success of Hellblade brought Ninja Theory back into the spotlight. And in 2018, the studio was acquired by Microsoft and are now part of Xbox Game Studios. Since then, as part of Xbox Game Studios, they have been developing other ambitious projects like Bleeding Edge in 2020, and they are currently making a sequel to Hellblade called Senua's Saga, Hellblade 2. And so they're still going, from a spare bedroom in Cambridge to an Xbox first party studio. Ninja Theory's journey has really always been about survival through innovation. They have dug and clawed their way out of the brink of bankruptcy so many times. So many times.
Yeah, sounds like it.
And they're not struggling anymore. I mean, let's be honest. Enslaved did okay, DMC did okay, Hellblade made it. They made it with Hellblade, right? And they got now they have all the funding of Microsoft. And to be fair, Microsoft doesn't close a lot of studios. Not to say they never do. They're just not as known for it as the other big uns like Activision or EA or what have you?
Yeah, that's fair.
Enslaved Odyssey to the West may not have sold as well as they hoped, but it stands as an important chapter in their history. It's a reminder that a studio's willingness to take risks, adapt, and push storytelling and games forward can actually be rewarded. Now, if you'd like to learn more about Enslaved Odyssey to the West or any of the other games we covered, like Ico or Another World, DMC was episode 20. Shadow of the Colossus is where we talked about Team Ico. That's 164. Another World we covered in episode 103. You can, of course, find all these old episodes anywhere you listen to podcasts or on our website, www.memorycardlane.com. Rob, what else can people find on our website?
You can find a calendar of our future episode topics. You can find a link to our Discord where you can come chat with Dave and I about episode topics or other things gaming related. You can find a link to our Patreon where you can help support us and get access to ad-free and unedited versions of all of our episodes. And you can find links to our social media where I am on several platforms as Rob_O_Raptor and Dave.
I can be found on various platforms as David is wrong. Each week, we'll tell you one story relevant to the current week in gaming history. It can be about a game, a technology, a company, maybe something else completely unexpected. We've covered everything from classic franchises to quirky side stories and places in gaming's past. While doing so, we hope to teach you something new about the topic, what it took from the world as its inspiration, or what it gave back to the world in its legacy. We love this because every week when we sit down to do our research and outline these episodes, we discover new facts, odd connections, and little pieces of history that we've never heard before. And when I learn something, I get excited because I know that I get to share that discovery with you. It's a fantastic cycle of teaching and learning and teaching. And in celebration of that cycle, we always go roundtable and talk about our takeaways every week. So, Rob, what did you learn today?
Well, I have a couple of takeaways because it's really hard to choose just one. The first is the easy one. It's just always good to hear how they persevered, continued, and even if they did make a game that I absolutely do not like for any reason, um, they still did well, and it's deserved if they stuck with it for so long. It's good that they managed that, and it's great hearing the perseverance. But also, spare bedroom. I mean, come on,
Yeah, for sure.
that's just fantastic.
For sure.
So that's it for me. What about yourself, Dave?
My sentiment is similar. I never understood how much of a struggle Ninja Theory had to survive. And it wasn't just once, it wasn't twice, it wasn't even three times realistically.
No, it
It,
was a lot.
it happened over and over and over. And each time they found a way to persevere. And I have a genuine newfound appreciation for them now with that and with that in mind. I It's impressive how far they've come. It's impressive that they got to the point where they could make Hellblade. It's impressive that they got to the point where they were a Microsoft Xbox studio. And I can only imagine how good that felt when they were approached and acquired. It was finally a we've made it type of situation.
Oh, absolutely.
And I think it's fantastic. I have like I said, newfound appreciation for Ninja Theory. All right. Well, before I take it out of here and look at next week, is there anything that you have would like to add to today's episode?
I'll just take one quick moment to say thank you so much to everyone for listening. It means the world to us to have you along as we learn about all of these fascinating studios, gaming topics, hardwares, or whatever else we may talk about. So thanks for joining us, and we hope you continue.
Tameem Antoniades set out to make games that felt like stories, and with Enslaved Odyssey to the West, he proved just how far that vision could go. On a shoestring budget and in the shadow of past struggles, Ninja Theory pulled together an extraordinary team with Serkis, Garland, and Sawhney to craft an experience that looked and felt like nothing else in 2010. It wasn't just combat and spectacle, it was characters, emotion, and partnership told with cinematic weight. Now, the game didn't sell the way its creators had hoped, but its influence endured. Enslaved showed that games could carry the intimacy of a buddy drama while still delivering blockbuster action. That willingness to push boundaries became part of Ninja Theory's identity, carrying them forward through DMC, into their independent AAA experiments with Hellblade, and eventually into Xbox Game Studios. Looking back now, frankly, Enslaved feels like a game ahead of its time. Its focus on character driven drama, its fusion of film and gameplay, and its willingness to slow down and let two people carry an epic all foreshadowed where narrative designing in games would go. It may not have found its audience in 2010, but its DNA can be seen in countless titles that followed, from cinematic adventures to experimental indies. And so while the market may not have been ready for Enslaved, its spirit still lives on in every risk Ninja Theory takes. It stands as a reminder that games aren't just about mechanics or markets, they can be about relationships, resilience, and the journey we take together. Next week, we're trading the post-apocalyptic journey of Enslaved Odyssey to the West for the ancient battlegrounds of Age of Empires. Released in 1997, this iconic real-time strategy game let players command civilizations, manage resources, and rewrite history as they built empires from the ground up. With its historical setting and innovative gameplay, Age of Empires became a cornerstone of the RTS genre. Join us as we delve into its history, mechanics, and its legacy on next week's empire building trip down memory card lane. Do the thing.
Scooby Doo Bop 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 Boo.